Are you looking to buy a house? Hey everyone, how are you all going? I hope you had a good Easter. I hope you had some plenty of chocolate goodies you tucked away, moment on the lips, forever on the hips. I hope you enjoyed the long weekend. This is the Budget Investor and I'm Willie Isles, and we're here to bring you one more video. Today's video we're going to go into like a little bit of a slight tangent. You might not think it's directly investing, but it kind of is in a little bit here in New Zealand. Today we're going to talk about buying your first home. Property in New Zealand, it's a popular asset class, and whether you own one house in your life or two or many more, it's an asset, it typically has grown in value, and we're going to look at that today. Look at the first steps of buying your first home. Now, the government just released a whole bunch of new rules. Not really, they just kind of tweaked the old rules, just changed little bits and pieces here and there. So we're just going to run through those, actually, give you a bit of an overview and some of the plans that they have going forward for the future and what new home buying might look like.
Alright, so let's get into it and look at what some of these changes are. So the first one is with a few little tinkering around with the new limits for first home buyers. Some of these rules are unchanged, but they have made little adjustments. So the first one is the grant that you can get. Now this is unchanged, so just to quickly run through what it is. Before, if you were an individual and you were eligible, you could get up to $5,000 towards buying an existing house, or $10,000 if you were purchasing a brand new house. And you could also do this as a couple, and it basically just doubles it if you're both eligible. So $10,000 for an existing house, or $20,000 for a new build. So that's unchanged. And so is this next point. If you're eligible, use as little as a 5% deposit, and you can get your loan through New Zealand Home Loans as well, which is really good for anyone who's ever used New Zealand Home Loans or know what they do. They're really good at setting up and structuring your financing in the most cost-effective way, so that you don't need to worry about all that sort of stuff. They'll help you pay off your house quicker. They'll get it structured right. This next point is the first lot of changes that we've seen here, and it's just a little bit of tinkering around with the income levels. So obviously over time, we set these thresholds a while ago now, and since then we've seen incomes increase, as well as our economy has grown and housing has grown at the same time. So we might need to look for that higher paying job to be able to afford that house now. So this is just a little bit of an increase for an individual from 85 to 95, and if you're two or more people from 130 to 150, just to recognize that housing is more expensive now, and we need to just raise these caps to make it more fair to include people who might be earning just a little bit more than the previous caps. Maybe they're just not quite relevant anymore. And where they've done the most tinkering around is with the new house price caps. So here we've got two columns for new property on the left and two columns for existing property on the right. And within that, on the left is the previous amount, and on the right is the new amount. So these are the caps for which you can buy a house up to and be eligible for the first home grant and the first home loan. And it's just got it broken down by region there, so you can see that. So you'll be able to find your own region, and if you're lucky, it's gone up. If you're unlucky, there's no change. But that's life. If there's no change, it obviously means that you've got lots of affordable housing around. The government have based this off basically current market data and a few assumptions put in there, and that's how they came up with these numbers. But what you will notice is if you look at the existing property house prices, the increase has been rather modest. It's small changes or no changes at all for the most part. And if you look at the new property, the increases generally are a bit larger than the increases for existing property. And I think that just wraps up into this whole theme that we're seeing come out of the government, is that they really want to push the incentive towards building new houses. They really want to push that on everyone. They want to increase our housing stock and at the same time improve the quality of it. So if you're knocking down an old house and putting up a new one, generally it's going to be of better quality. So next point will be on the RBNZ. So they've already put back in the LVR restrictions. This was already known that this was coming. I just got a little graphic up here of what it was before. I can run that through with you. It's basically been implemented the same. There's just one small change, and that's only if you are in the business of property investing. So on the left here we've got sort of what the LVR rules are for a like a first home buyer or someone buying their own home. So what you need is, normally if you're buying a house you need at least a 20% deposit, and that is the LVR restriction. But there is an exemption that allows banks up to 20% of their portfolio. They can basically do low deposit lending, so they can lend to someone who has less than 20% deposit, less than 20% of the time. And they've got a similar rule for property investors as well. That's this graphic on the right. And so basically the way that works is for less than 5% of the bank's portfolio, they're allowed to lend to property investors with a low deposit lending. So that deposit threshold was 30% under the, before COVID, when they released the LVR restrictions. It's now been put back in at 40%, which is higher, but it's actually what the rules were first introduced as. So it's not too much of a shock. We've been through it before. We know how it works. Nothing too big or scary here. A couple of the other things that the Reserve Bank is looking at is debt to income ratios. The RBNZ wants that tool in its toolbox. Why wouldn't it? It's one more lever to pull against the banks, but the government's pretty worried about doing this. It doesn't want to hamper first home buyers from being able to enter the market by putting another restrictive tool in the way. So that's good for anyone looking to buy their first home. But basically we've already got a tool in there that tests your income. I mean, they already have to be financially responsible and look at your income, your serviceability, and in a way that's already testing, is your income sufficient to pay off this debt. So it's kind of a moot point whether the RBNZ gets this tool or not to impose on banks, which the banks will then use to impose on their lending. The other thing the RBNZ is looking at, or the Reserve Bank is looking at, is interest-only mortgages. So we don't know what they'll do there, and they might make a recommendation around restricting these more on properties, or perhaps they'll look at removing them altogether. We don't know, but as time goes on, we'll learn more. And basically, to the big cool thing, the big candy pot, the big pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, is this housing acceleration fund. So this is the cool announcement from the government. Like I said earlier, they've got this big focus on new housing, and with new housing you need new infrastructure, and you need quality infrastructure, well thought out, well planned for the future, and normally that's quite expensive and difficult to do. So what the government has done is they've actually set aside $3.8 billion in total related to housing developments and infrastructure, the building of the roads, the pipes, the transport networks and all that. So that's really good. You don't want to build a whole bunch of new houses out in the countryside, and there's one road in, one road out, and just becomes a nightmare for residents. So it's really good to see that they're actually investing money in this area. So, the plan, I guess, is that they'll have this led by, part private organisations in a sort of joint venture with the government. The government would be doing a lot of work themselves. They'll also be providing some support and additional lending to the Land for Housing program, which is basically how the government looks at and views the land that it owns. Is it operating effectively? Could there be more development there? Could they put in more houses or do something more productive with that land? So that's generally good news. But by and large, there's not too many details around how all this is going to work, but they've said they're sort of going to come out with more detail in June 2021 this year. So that'll be good. Like right now, it's kind of just all high level. We don't really know, what's going to be in the pie, whether it's going to be meat or veggies or just a little bit of jelly. We're not sure yet. And the last good thing that they're doing is they are providing an extra $2 billion or help Kāinga Ora to secure an extra $2 billion in funding, and this will be to help them deliver on their program of purchasing land for social housing and development. So this news is obviously really good if you're in that lower end of the economy and you rely on these services, or you have a need for them. It's going to mean that the government is more empowered to actually deliver housing options in affordable areas for you to rent out. The only downside to this is they're basically handing over a big fat check, and they're going to be almost in direct competition with first home buyers some of the time. You could be looking at similar affordable properties, so you could expect a little bit of increased competition there. I mean, basically as a first home buyer, your wallets won't be as deep as the government, so you're going to find it a lot harder to purchase a house that they are also looking at. But by and large, though, some areas will have crossover, but not all the time. Not all areas. These are got to be strategic areas for Kāinga Ora that they're looking to develop in. Those aren't necessarily always going to be the same areas that first home buyers are looking to buy in. So there might be some overlap, but not too much. But like I said before, the Housing Acceleration Fund is kind of like the big candy. It's the big shiny tool. We don't have much details around it at the moment, but it's kind of it could be a big deal. It's definitely the area that's got the most focus on it at the moment, and it's all around delivering those newly built houses for the future. So I think it's a very good area to keep an eye on. As time comes around, they'll release more details and you'll know where they're developing and what they're doing, and this will be very good to keep in mind if you're looking to buy your first house. Even if you're looking to buy your second, third or fourth house, it'll be always important to your decision making.
Wow, so there we go, another episode done and dusted. I hope you picked up a lot in the video today. If you're looking at buying your house in the next year or two, lots of little bits of information here that you will find useful, so take it and go forward with this fountain of knowledge behind you and make good decisions. And don't forget the same old story, if you want to support the channel, give it a like, subscribe, share it with your friends, family, or someone you know who might be looking to buy their first house. Obviously, I post all my videos to YouTube, but we've also got a Facebook, we've got an Instagram, we've got a Twitter. Hopefully soon I'll put up a little bit of a LinkedIn, and also we'll get a Patreon page set up. So really excited about the Patreon page. That'll give me a good platform to actually be able to create some more in-depth and meaningful content. you know, I got a little idea for a little series, you know, real stories, real numbers, where we actually dive into my personal situation. You know, I'll tell you what I've been through, and we use real numbers and figures, and we can see the transition that I've been through in the last few years. So that's just one little thing. Just keep a lookout. Plenty of socials out there, so just you keep doing you, and I'll keep doing me, and we'll see each other in the next video.